Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My sister set me up on a blind date without warning me, so I embarrassed her. After that, my son's fiance demands I pay $150,000 for her wedding, but won't let me invite a few guests. And after that, am I the jerk for reporting my classmates for joking that I have pretty privilege? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to set anyone up on a blind date. Oh come on, you know how much I love making people feel awkward. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My sister sets me up on a blind date without warning me, so I embarrassed her. I, 25 female, have never been interested in romantic relationships. It just doesn't appeal to me. I'm very busy with grad school and work, and I like being on my own. I have friends and a dog, and that's honestly enough. I'm happy with my life. My family thinks this is weird beyond belief, and the pressure has ramped up now that even my youngest brother has gotten married, and I'm the only one that's left on the shelf. My older sister's husband has been offering to set me up for years because I'm too hot to stay single, whatever that means. I've always tried to refuse politely, but it's wearing thin. I was home visiting my parents this weekend, and my sister invited me out to dinner at a new restaurant. It was an upscale place, so she said to wear something nice. I thought it was just going to be the three of us, but there was another guy in the car when they picked me up. He said he was brother-in-law's friend, Joe. Awkward, but not too unusual. We get to the restaurant and sit down, and Joe keeps trying to make conversation with me, with brother-in-law and my sister egging it on, and I finally joke, "Am I on a date or something? What's with all the questions?" And my sister straight up says, "Yes, we thought you just needed a little push, so we decided to set you two up." I asked Joe if he knew about this, and he admitted that brother-in-law told him he wanted to set him up on a blind date, but that he was glad he came. So I was the only one that didn't know it was a date. I was pretty mad, but didn't want to cause a scene in the restaurant, so I finished dinner and gave really short responses to questions. "So, you're in a PhD program?" "Yes." "What's that like?" "Busy." And the evening just stayed really uncomfortable and awkward. Joe apologized in the car, and I told him it wasn't his fault, but he probably shouldn't let brother-in-law set him up again, and I wasn't interested in dating anyone. Apparently, he told brother-in-law off in the car about making him look bad so that he didn't even have a chance. My sister is mad because I was rude and embarrassed them when they were just trying to help me out of my shell. My parents think I should have appreciated the gesture and given Joe a chance because you never know, and they want me to apologize. Not the jerk. They knew your boundaries, they broke them. Knowing them at that, I can assume had you been a bit more polite and engaging with him, they would use that as reasoning to set you up more. Your sister and brother-in-law are upset because they looked bad to Joe because they clearly misled him some as well and didn't want to own up to that. Not the jerk. The rude people in this situation are your sister and brother-in-law. Surprise blind date isn't a thing, it's an ambush. Not the jerk. They look bad because they are bad. They look exactly how they are. Their fault, and they deserve to be yelled at by the both of you. They need to respect your choice. Being a romantic is valid. You may need or want to learn how to set stronger boundaries, but that's your choice. Not the jerk. I know I'll get downvoted for this, but y'all gotta hear me out. Men and women have been completing each other for as long as we've been around. A man needs him a good woman, and a woman needs her a good man. It ain't rocket science. I don't know why so many of y'all want to act like you don't need a partner these days. I think it's because you spend too much time on your computers and phones. In life, nothing can fulfill you the way a husband or a wife can. This used to be common sense back in my day, but these days it's like so many of y'all just want to be alone, and it's really sad. Deny it all you want, but in your hearts, you know how much happier you'd be if you found that special someone to complete your life. I found mine over 60 years ago, and we spent the last 60 years being lost in love together. I can't imagine how my life would have been without that man. It's been 2 years since I lost him during lockdown, and not a day goes by that I don't miss him. I share my story with you because just like I tell my granddaughters, it's good to be strong and tough and stand up for yourself. But as for myself, I know I never would have been as happy as I was if I had never given my husband a chance, as y'all like to call it. To tell you the truth, He was the one who gave me a chance. Back then, the girls were the ones who chased the boys. The problem these days is y'all are on your Facebooks and Instagrams so much that you expect a Fabio to sweep you off your feet, and you don't want to give the normal Joes a chance. My grandsons and granddaughters both use those swipe dating apps, and when they're at my house, the girls get constant pop-ups from guys trying to meet them, but my grandsons never get anyone to meet them. It's strange times we're living in, and to be honest, I'm looking forward to the day I leave this old world and go on home to be with the Lord and my dearest Albert. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is her sister and brother-in-law? Please let us know. I know everyone's gonna hate that final comment, but I'm still gonna drop an F for Albert in the chat. My son's fiance demands I pay $150,000 for her wedding, but won't let me invite a few guests. I, 54 female, have 3 kids. The one pertaining to this post is 26 male. We'll call him Caleb. Caleb has been with his fiance, Ashley, who's 26, for 4 years, and they recently got engaged. I've offered to pay for their wedding with 2 stipulations. 1. They use a wedding planner. I feel this is essential due to the size of the event and the amount of money going into it. 2. I have 8 people I'm inviting, older relatives that I'm close with. They both agreed to a wedding planner and said they will look for one that they feel comfortable with. The issue is, Ashley does not want me to be able to invite anyone. Caleb knows the relatives well, but it's not super close with them, and Ashley has only met them a few times. The wedding is going to be very large and a grand affair. She comes from a very large family, and we have a very large family. We're expecting 300 to 400 guests, and I've given them a budget of $150,000. Caleb says he doesn't care, but it makes Ashley uncomfortable since she doesn't know them that well and it's her day. Her family is saying that I'm the jerk, even though they aren't willing to contribute financially. I don't care about any of the other details of their wedding. Whatever they choose is fine as long as I get the 2 things that I want. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Edit. The 8 people are my aunts and uncles. They help me a lot with the kids. We don't come from money. I was in a bad accident that left me paralyzed from the waist down. With the lawsuit money, I made some investments that turned out to be very lucrative. Without their help between watching the kids and financially, I would have been up the creek without a paddle when my kids were younger. Edit 2. I see a lot of people saying that she's a gold digger, but I do not agree with that. Her father is a very well-respected and sought-after criminal defense attorney in our area. Her mom runs an at-home business. Ashley is currently a surgical intern, whereas Caleb is an RN. Her parents paid for all of them to go to college, which is why they're not willing to contribute financially towards a wedding. I just got done having lunch with Caleb to talk to him about the conundrum we're in. He said that he hasn't spoken to her about what they've done for us in the past. He did not realize that it would be such a big deal for them to come and figured because of their age, they would not want to come. Ashley knows the majority of the family really well because I host birthday parties for all 3 kids, as well as a 4th of July barbecue every year. My aunts and uncles rarely attend the events that I throw because it's hard for them to get around. I'll update after Caleb gets back to me about their talk. Nope, not the jerk. You're asking for 8 people and offering $150,000. I'm assuming you are not exerting control over anything else. OP. The rest of the wedding is in between them and their wedding planner, unless my opinion is asked for. Not the jerk. Caleb says he doesn't care, but it makes Ashley uncomfortable since she doesn't know them that well. With 400 guests, there's no way she will know every single person well or even at all. It's a power play. It's not her day, it's their day. The groom's opinion matters too. What does she expect? That only her family should get invited? You're being more than generous in the amount you're offering. You have a right to invite his family to show up. Not the jerk. The bride is the definition of entitled. To accept the gift of $150,000 for her wedding, but not allow you to invite 8 relatives? Which would be in the essence about 2% of the guest list. That's ridiculous. Does she allow any plus ones? Or is there an interview or approval process for that? Not the jerk. Not the jerk. I may be old-fashioned, but I believe that the person paying for the party is the person hosting the party, even if the party is your kid's wedding reception. The bride and groom are the guests of honor, but you are the host, and having a small contingent of family that you are choosing to invite doesn't seem unreasonable to me. Not the jerk. Why is your son allowing her to act like this? Also, why is he not seeing this as the red flag that it is? You're giving her $150,000 for her wedding, and she won't allow you to invite a few guests? It breaks my heart to see so many young men these days marrying girls who act like this just because they find them attractive and they don't want to be alone. A guy will hitch his wagon with a spoiled brat who acts like this, then act surprised when she leaves him high and dry, taking everything from him that she can. After my second divorce, they were cheating both times. I gave up on trying to find the right one. I was a millionaire about 20 years ago thanks to my successful career in real estate. These days, I'm lucky to get my darn rent paid. If I had never gotten married and hadn't been used the way I was, I'd be living a good life in my senior years. Instead, I now spend my days delivering for Domino's and hoping for decent tips to supplement my Social Security. I spent everything I had buying big houses and fancy cars, trying to keep my marriages from falling apart, but in the end, it was just never enough for them. Then, when they decide to leave you, you're the one who loses everything. Boo-hoo, poor little you. All I hear from your nonsensical rambling is that both of your marriages failed because you weren't doing what needed to be done. You really want to play the victim when both of your wives cheated on you? We don't cheat for fun. We do it because we aren't being fulfilled at home. I would know, having been in the same predicament myself, due to a husband who wasn't fulfilling his role as the man of the house. Then you really want to complain about your exes getting your house, cars, money, etc.? You claim to have already been a millionaire before you got married. That just shows how easy it is for dudes to make money compared to how hard it is for us. You probably had all that money handed down to you from mommy and dada, so I'm glad the courts did the right thing and gave it to the woman who deserved it for wasting their time with a loser like you. Why are people on Reddit so mean? And in regards to your comment about the story where you ask, why is OP's son allowing this? You're basically admitting that you think he should be a controlling jerk and tell her that her opinion doesn't matter. Newsflash, bud. That's how you become a sad old man like you delivering pizza. You don't control anyone else, no matter how entitled you feel to do so. I guarantee you, your kids went no contact with you if you treated them that way. And you people thought I was mean. Am I the jerk for reporting my classmates for joking that I have pretty privilege? Background. I'm female 23, one of only a few female students in a male-dominated course. Furthermore, I am at a highly prestigious university and I haven't really gotten along with the guys in my course. They are all very competitive and I just don't really enjoy their company. Everything turns into a contest and they definitely take me less seriously. I stopped interacting with them beyond the mere minimum and choose to hang out with other people. Anyway, I did well in our recent exams. I topped 2 out of the 4 exams that we've had so far. Our professor congratulated me during class. I wouldn't have advertised this myself. Ever since then, my interactions with a specific group of male classmates have gotten weird. They're now outright rude and challenge me aggressively in class discussions. We recently had some presentations, and one of them chose to do theirs on, to put it simply, pretty privilege. They specifically pointed to 2 papers that suggested that pretty female students get overscored in assessments. The other guys in the group snickered, and one even gave me a wink. Afterwards, I heard them in the hallway joking that they had experience with that themselves. I've been seeing a PhD student within our department for a month. He has literally nothing to do with our course. Well, we ran into one of my course mates, A, together. The next day in class, his friend, B, asked me if my boyfriend helped me with the exams. He said this intentionally loudly and in front of the professor who heard this. I replied that I don't have a boyfriend because he's not my boyfriend. But then B pointed out that he had run into me with the PhD student, making a point to say his name. The professor knows him. I just replied that we're only friends. They didn't let up. I heard that they discussed this thing in 2 more classes in earshot of the professors. Both times, they suggested I got help for my exams. I wasn't even seeing him then. I didn't confront them, but this has been causing me so much anxiety. Even without the exam accusations, I worked hard to get here, and I don't want to be known among the faculty for my dating life. I raised this issue with my supervisor, without the intention of taking it any further, but I wanted her advice as a woman in academia. She convinced me to let her email their supervisors to remind them of proper conduct and describe their treatment of an unnamed female student. She didn't name me, but they figured it out. They confronted me after class and asked me why I would report their silly joke. Apparently, their supervisors are now very cold towards them and less interested in helping. It's not a formal complaint, only their supervisors know. But one of them, C, said his supervisor writes the reports for his financial aid and scholarship, and it was my fault if he lost out on that. I now feel a bit embarrassed, and this was compounded by a friend telling me that I took it too far because C shouldn't lose out on his scholarship. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Any retaliation should also be reported. They're angling for some big problems if they keep this up. Not the jerk. They know what they're doing because jokesters like this have been doing it for years. Undermine your accomplishments, question your abilities, and then act shocked when you stand up for yourself? I'm happy and somewhat surprised that the faculty and administration are treating this as seriously as it deserves. If their pretty privileged joke made you lose out on a scholarship or caused you to be graded extra hard, they wouldn't give a hoot. They intentionally and repeatedly made this silly joke out loud in front of professors. Not the jerk. Maybe they should have thought about treating you with respect and professionalism before it had to come from a place of authority. I wouldn't mind those bozos losing their scholarships if they think it's appropriate to treat classmates that way. Am I the jerk for telling my grandchildren's father I don't owe his other kids anything? I lost my youngest, Joy, a decade ago. She left behind her husband and 2 kids who are now 15 and 16 years old. My daughter was very close to her dad and me, and when she was at her sickest, she begged us to stay in the kids' lives and make sure they always knew she loved them and that we were her family just as much. She mentioned how worried she was that her husband would encourage them to forget her and would try to replace her for them with a new woman. She asked that we leave anything we might have left to her kids. We assured her we would never let the relationship end and that we would always make sure that they had a good life and would remember her always. 8 months after she passed, her husband moved in with his now wife into their home. She had a baby with someone else and was also expecting a baby with someone. At that point, he did attempt to make it a package deal where we could not see our grandkids without treating his now stepkids as our grandkids, and that we were to treat all future kids of his the same. Otherwise, we would need to be cut out to give our grandkids the chance to form the new family bonds without interference from us. That they deserved the chance to have another mother and only see the new kids as true siblings. Their lawyer told them we would have a case to get grandparents' visitation. We also sought advice on if we were denied access, if we could obtain that. We were told, given our close relationship with the kids, it would be easy to get access through the courts. This led to us getting minimal access, but it was all that was needed because our grandkids were glad to see us and their aunts, uncles, and cousins. In the last few years, my former son-in-law has found himself estranged from his own family, and his wife's family are also no longer in the picture, and he has 6 kids, not counting my grandkids, in his home with no family or support outside of him and his wife. Now that my grandkids are teenagers, they seek to spend more time with us, and their lives have benefited from it. We admittedly spoil them more than some would like because of the circumstances, but they are wonderful kids. Their father confronted me recently about his other kids and how they have no extended family and are suffering seeing their siblings being spoiled. He also said we had already come between our grandkids and their siblings because they're not close and have never asked for their siblings to be part of the extended family they have. He told me I owe it to his kids to step in and give them love and some of the same spoiling. I told him I do not owe his other kids anything and that I would never forgive him for what he attempted to do before. He told me I was cold-hearted and callous. Part of me wonders if he's right because the kids are innocent, and even though I have never considered them family, they're still young and have nothing to do with my former son-in-law's actions. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Who moves in their girlfriend 8 months after their wife passes? I feel bad for the other kids. It sounds like their parents are awful, but that's not your problem. Not the jerk. He never should have tried to force his new kids on you. It's not your fault. All the rest of the family is estranged from them. It's great you guys are willing to do so much for your grandkids and being so supportive for them. Not the jerk. I'm sure your grandkids are happy they have your support. You don't owe your ex-son-in-law anything. He was the one that decided to have more kids. Everyone sucks here. The reason I'm going with this is that the way you justify and word this, you seem to be withholding from these kids primarily as a way to punish their father. It's not that you don't have the time, resources, or energy to give a little bit to these kids. You are choosing not to as a way to make their father suffer more and claim that's honoring your daughter. That's crappy. No one would expect you to treat them the same as your grandkids, but you very well could send some small things back with the grandkids for them sometimes, or even take them out with the other kids a couple times a year for something special, like grandkids' birthdays. These kids have what appears to be a real crappy father and mother, and you have the opportunity to give them a small amount of love and support, and you're choosing not to with the justification of, not my grandkids. Who cares? These kids need all the love they can get, and you could, with very little effort, give some to them, and you choose not to. So yeah, you're the jerk in that respect. Am I the jerk for telling my sister she's the reason our parents are divorcing? About a month ago, my 24 male parents, who are 55 and 57, announced that they were getting divorced. This has been quite a shock to most people, as they seem to be having no issues out of the ordinary. However, I've been the one privy to the information of why they are getting divorced. It's because of my sister, Anne, who's 26. Anne is a deadbeat. She's never worked more than 14 hours a week since getting expelled from college for multiple acts of cheating and code of conduct violations 5 years ago. All she does is sit at home most days watching TV or going over to her loser boyfriend's house. She feels no need to support herself and expects my parents to carry her through life. She's been in therapy since she was 14, but can't keep one for more than a year because she gets dropped as a client due to her lying and inability to show up to appointments. My parents have spent over a decade trying to get some mental issue pinned down for Anne, and all they've gotten is that she's just a lazy narcissist. Last year, my mom decided enough was enough and planned to kick Anne to the curb and wash her hands of her. Dad disagreed, and in the end, the two's marriage got torn apart. I know because both of them have come to me basically admitting that if Anne was not a factor, divorce wouldn't even be a consideration. I don't get along with Anne for a variety of reasons. She's always been a bully and owes me a large sum of money at the moment. The thing that boils my blood, though, is that she's oblivious to the situation between our parents, or she just doesn't care. She had a literal tantrum when the possibility of the house being sold came up because she didn't want to have to move to an apartment with my dad. Last night, I found myself at my parents' house and had the misfortune of talking to Anne. Anne mentioned that she's getting really sick of my mom's melodramatic crap and not just leaving the house to her and my dad. Something struck me at that moment, and I just asked Anne if she really does not care that she's such a selfish, garbage, waste of space human that she's driven her parents to get a divorce. I elaborated and told her the full truth that she is in fact the only reason they're getting a divorce because moms finally realized that there is no hope Anne will ever grow up. The crap storm this caused was massive. Anne acted as if I sold her out to the Romans, and my parents agreed between "she deserves to know" and "we told you that in confidence." Because Anne cannot keep her mouth shut either, the entire extended family has begun to hear too. I want to know, before opinions start forming outside the inner circle, if I'm the jerk here. Nope, not the jerk. Sorry, some tough love is needed with Anne. Doubt she's gonna get her crap together, but she needed to hear it. Not everything is about her. Hopefully she can get her act together and be a contributing member of society, and your parents can get back together with some therapy. Everyone sucks here. Your parents aren't getting a divorce because of Anne. They're getting a divorce because they couldn't find a way to work together on this and find a solution that prioritized their marriage. Each of them decided they would rather not be married anymore than compromise on this. Regardless of which of your parents is right or wrong on that, they should be owning the decision to divorce rather than shifting the blame to Anne. You're the jerk. Anne is the scapegoat for the divorce. If they really wanted to remain married, then they would, and they would work together on the solution. Your mother gave your father an ultimatum and he refused, so your mother responded with a divorce. They made their own choice. Anne's behavior is problematic, but she's not the reason for the divorce. If I had to guess, it's been an ongoing issue where your father neglects your mother's feelings and/or your mom pushes your dad into doing things he isn't comfortable with. They clearly don't know how to work together. You're the jerk 100%. Not saying your sister doesn't deserve tough love, she absolutely does, but only 2 people decided to get divorced and she's not one of them. They chose not to work out their differences. They chose not to be unified. Your sister had nothing to do with it. Couples deal with similar situations without divorce all the time. It's never the kid's fault for the divorce. No, we're not here to eat. We're producing content right now. I work in a really cute restaurant that's popular with the blogger crowd. Our decor is pretty, our food is pretty, and our cocktails are pretty. The restaurant as a whole is quite Instagrammable. Unfortunately, we occasionally get influencers who think being present on Instagram, TikTok, etc. makes them the main character of the world, who thinks the rotation of the earth hinges on them, continuing to upload pictures of themselves in cute clothes. An event last month that I'm still angry about. A group of 5 girls came into our restaurant, and for some reason, they decide that it's the perfect place to have a photo shoot and a catwalk. Literally, we have girls who start strutting up and down the aisles between tables and filming each other. We had guest complaints because most people do not feel comfortable being filmed at their tables by random women in street clothes, so the manager comes out to check in with the ladies. At this point, they've decided to seat themselves at a table, after ignoring the host, of course, and our manager asks if they're being attended to by a server yet. One of the girls has the gall to say, "We're not here to eat. We're here producing content for our channels." So, of course, the manager tells them they'll need to leave, as our tables are reserved for guests only. They decide to stay and keep photographing each other. Our host decides to interfere before our manager comes back and tells the girls that they do need to leave when asked, or our manager might call security to have them escorted out, which is a pretty sensible thing to me, right? Well, if you're an entitled influencer, apparently it's the worst thing in the world. Almost immediately after leaving, the girl actually uploads a whole testimony to Instagram, crying and saying that she and her girls discovered a cute restaurant, but the manager decided to kick them out for taking photos and stealing content, and that our manager called security on them without warning, which shows that our manager was dangerous, and that our manager needs a culture class after putting them in danger. And on top of that, it's Black History Month. The gall and entitlement gets me. You can't come into a restaurant, start filming other people without their permission, sit at a table without buying anything, and then refuse to leave when asked. You're making other people uncomfortable, inconveniencing guests who had a reservation, and taking money out of the pocket of the server whose table you're sitting at. Shaking my head. Dealership said sue, so I did. This all started December of last year and just finished last week. So I bought a car from one of those buy here and pay here places. I love the car. It's a Mazda 5 from 2014, basically the smallest minivan I've ever seen. Well, on Christmas, we drove to some family for dinner and celebration. When we went to leave, the car wouldn't start. We checked everything and found out the horn wasn't even connected. Any fuse that wasn't absolutely needed was simply missing, and the tires were the original tires. Beyond that, we hooked up to the computer and it read several errors, but the one getting in the way was the immobilizer. I had never known the van had one. I called AAA and set up towing, but because we were in the middle of nowhere, AAA couldn't get a tow truck to us under our membership, free. So we had to call a tow truck and then submit the bill to AAA after the fact. So family let us borrow their car and the van was towed to a shop. A few days later, and the shop calls and tells us what's wrong. I live in Texas, a single-party consent state, and I record all of my calls thanks to an app on my phone. The long list of car issues isn't important. The point of this van is a basic work van. The only issue they found stopping it from running is the immobilizer inactive, and they can't touch it without talking to the dealer. I three-way called the dealership and the shop, and we talked for 17.34 minutes during this call, and the dealership acknowledged we were not behind, and everything should be working unless it malfunctioned. The dealership also gave permission for the shop to bypass it, and we would be reimbursed the towing and repairs. All the shop needed to do to get the van running was bypass the immobilizer, and a couple days later, we picked up the van and paid the bill. Both bills came to just under $300, and we started calling the dealership. The first few conversations go well, and the phone rep seemed interested in helping, but mostly I end up getting tossed around from department to department and then disconnected. That went on for some time, and I of course took to Reddit to find out options. As almost always happens, Reddit users know some crazy facts and how to get stuff done. So I followed their advice and kept calling, eventually getting to a supervisor, and the first supervisor said he'd get it taken care of, and we ended the call. 2 more days go by and nothing is heard. So I call back, get tossed around, and then get another manager who says, "We are not responsible for mechanical issues and hang-ups." I call back, now quite annoyed, and eventually get back to the same manager. I explain I have all the information and call recordings, including the repair shop three-way call. He cuts me off and says, "What? Are you going to take us to court over $296.47? I don't think so, but go ahead and sue. We will win, and if that small amount is worth suing to you, you probably don't have the resources to actually sue. This, of course, made me quite upset, so off to a justice of the peace and explained what's happened. They give us a small claims form and explain the process. We can fill it out and pay for a constable to serve the dealership, or fill out the paper and take it to the dealership unfiled and explain everything to a manager in person. We chose the cheaper route because the manager on the phone was right. We didn't have the money to have it served, only filed. So we transcribed the phone calls, found out how to fill out the paper. The hardest part was finding the agent. We didn't know what that meant, but we again turned to Reddit and learned. We gathered the bills and all the paperwork and made our way to the dealership's payment center. I wait in line and see the name of the manager is the same as the manager on the phone that told me to sue. I wait in line, and when it's my turn, I ask to talk to John, and he comes over and sits across from me. After making introductions, and I confirm it's the same guy, I start to explain the situation again. As I'm explaining, I see when he recalls talking to me on the phone. He starts to dismiss me, and I explain that he asked me to sue, and I'm here with all my evidence and the unfixed suit, giving him one final chance. He starts to look over the papers and asked if I still had the recordings. I said yes, I could email him a copy. We sit and talk for about an hour as he reads. Then I said with a slight aggravated tone, if something isn't done today, not only am I going to head right back to the courthouse and file, as well as tack on as much for emotional distress and whatever else the clerk hinted at. The clerk was very open-mouthed with ideas, as well as send a copy of everything to every email on the corporate website. At this, our conversation drew the attention of a woman in a power suit who rushes over for a recap. I find out she's John's boss's boss's boss, and she's none too happy about how far things have gone. She assured me that all would be made right and gave me her cell number and email. I gave her the papers and left. The next Monday at 8 a.m., I got a call asking if credit being applied to the account would be acceptable. I say yes, and she explains they will credit $500 to the account as payments. The payments are only $155 every 2 weeks. I agree, and we talk for a few minutes. When I ask why it took this much just to get things done, she laughed and said, it shouldn't have, and certain people are no longer employed at this company. Well, today was Wednesday and the day of the payment, but when I went to make the payment, it was already done. Thank you, Power Suit Lady.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.